Helldivers 2 is creating more than a fun co-op gaming experience. It's creating its own shared culture and community that is reminding us why we love video games, and it may be the meteor that ignites a hugely important shift in the gaming industry. In this video, we'll be exploring how it accomplishes that, while in and of itself being a love letter to the world of military sci-fi, especially Starship Troopers, Halo, and so much more. What may strike you the moment you boot up Helldivers 2 is exceptional production quality, but it's production quality for a piece of art that doesn't take itself too seriously.
Sweet liberty! No! Prove.
Or does it? That cut was actually really sick. Show that again.
Prove to yourself that you have the strength and the courage to be free.
Join the Helldivers.
Okay, I mean, it's not that serious. These guys are chest bumping. But the music's actually really good. Wait, huh? This seems like a lot of fanfare for a game that's about... Okay, what is it about? In 2024, it feels like everybody has an opinion now. Everybody has to let you know why this video game, movie, or music concert was bad. Not bad in terms of bad quality, no. Bad for society. And if you consume the wrong type of media, that's also bad. If you consume the media the wrong way, that's also bad. What's the right way to consume a video game? A video game's supposed to be fun, right? Well, Helldivers 2 manages to accomplish that, while providing some commentary and no commentary all at the same time. If that feels like it makes no sense, keep watching. Anybody who's even remotely clued into the world of action movies, sci-fi, and military fiction is familiar with the movie Starship Troopers, and comparisons to this cult classic. It's another movie that had the John Carpenter effect, releasing to mixed and even flat-out abrasive reception. While Starship Troopers, the movie, leans into quite obviously over-the-top aspects to make dark humor on the topic of jingoism and putting too much stock into military society, it still, at its core, is a pretty entertaining action movie, even if it's trying to make a point. That's also part of the appeal though. Say something and have some fun while you're already there. But this is a movie. Helldivers 2 is a video game. And as far as games are concerned, if it's not fun, why bother? So the game's obviously heavily inspired by Starship Troopers. You fight on the behalf of
Super Earth, our home.
To take down the Terminid, giant bugs, and the automaton, giant robot, menace. The game leans heavily into this vibe. Players who get kicked out of your lobby are court-martialed. Players who leave the lobby return to civilian life. And behavior that is unbecoming of a champion of humanity is considered unpatriotic, at least according to your friends anyway. You'll spread managed democracy via bullets, orbital artillery from on high, and Earth's finest violence dispensing technology. And as far as you could tell, if you spent a lot of time online, everybody seems to be having a lot of fun spreading ordnance-sponsored freedom to the planets of the solar system. Explosively. The game never lets up with these thematic aspects. Every step of the way tries to deliver this point of blasting away humanity's greatest threats on the behalf of humankind and our way of life. And I'm smart and democratic, so I am immune to propaganda. I'm kidding, I'm not. From the moment you look out from the bridge of your super destroyer, one of many in a planet-wide campaign to dispense the GDP of several developing countries onto the surface below, and leave just about any trace of what was there turned inside out, including the ground it was walking on, it's clear that Helldivers 2 wants you to have as much fun as humanly possible. The game is built from the ground up with cooperation in mind. Reason being, you can certainly solo the missions if you want, but you can only do so much on your own as a lone soldier. And you're gonna be met with a certain difficulty cap at which the enemy types and amount of enemies you encounter is just gonna be too much. But what if you had a friend? What if you had two friends? What if there were four of you? What if one guy had the big gun to take out the light armor, the other one had the machine gun for the smaller mobs, and the other one had the ammo backpack to keep you all resupplied? And the other one had just about every automated death-dealing auto turret you could find. Okay, that's pretty cool. What if I need more than that? Well, how about a Space A-10 Thunderbolt? Got it.
Nice.
And all right, cool. I get it. Stuff explodes, but don't FPS games have other stuff that's not just shooting and exploding? How about something strategic? Well, yeah, you can call in smoke grenades too. You can call in a giant lightning rod, an EMP blast that slows down enemies, an orbital railgun that snipes the biggest, more heavily armored bad guy in the field, or giant laser. So, is the game difficult? It depends on the difficulty, duh. It's not a great question, because the game is as difficult as you make it. There are several difficulty levels, but it embraces the camaraderie of co-op shooters by giving you and your squad the itch to say, I think we can turn the heat up a little bit, and to see what happens. And it makes even the most terrifying and insane moments imaginable feel like you're right in the middle of an action movie, with incredible production quality, rousing soundtrack, cacophonous sound effects, and visceral voice acting. The reason this all works is because Helldivers II embraces a little rule in the movie business that all the greatest action directors, the Tom Cruises, the James Camerons, and the Michael Bays of the world understand. The rule of cool. One of the reasons the co-op shooter tends to do so well is the cinematic feel of it. You and your buddies feel like a small army fighting against the world for survival. It's not unfair to compare Helldivers 2 to Left 4 Dead in the sense that it follows a pretty similar mission structure. Load into the world, do what you gotta do, fight your way through hordes of bad guys, and get to the safe zone. In this case, a VTOL extraction aircraft that comes in during the heat of battle to save you from the coming tide, often just in the nick of time, but it's going to give you an opportunity to have a cinematic moment, as it flies in with a giant autocannon slung underneath the nose to give you just a little bit more push to make it out alive.
Pelican 1, maintaining altitude until Helldivers are within the extraction zone.
Come on, you...
Pelican 1, landing sequence initiated. Watch where you're standing.
You're doing great.
Come on.
Countdown initiated. Stand by for takeoff. Pelican 1 beginning ascent.
What the?
That's the game.
Oh.
That's the
My heart was
game.
pounding, dude.
That's the video game happening.
Have a taste of democracy!
Jesus.
I learned a lot.
No mag!
The orbital didn't kill him?
It's still alive?
Yep.
Still alive.
I
Watch out for the bomb.
He does not give a about the flamethrower.
Calling in reinforcements! I'm out!
Got him.
2 seconds on an orbital laser.
Holy. Okay, let's recuperate, gentlemen. Throughout the course of this video, you'll notice I've mixed and matched a lot of different playstyles and weapons. That's because the sandbox is so varied and interesting that I can't stop experimenting and trying out new stuff. Unfortunately, while I was recording, the heavy armor category is kind of useless since armor rating is all the same right now and doesn't adjust from the default. So you're just fat and slow. But you'll find yourself gravitating towards certain roles with your team and find things that you're comfortable with, like your own little Left 4 Dead posse you had maybe when you were a teenager. Out of your friends, which one are you? The game takes place in a giant interactive world map where you can observe the shifting tides of battle, as well as how many Helldivers are in the thick of the action to either defend from enemy onslaught or liberate with some managed democracy. Spontaneous moments spark opportunities to catch up with old friends as they drop in on your mission to help you out.
Allied destroyer joining squadron, deploying Helldiver to combat zone.
Kinda random. Wait, what? Oh, dude, it's Chowderhead.
Oh, you guys playing with Chowder?
Yeah, he just joined in. Populated combat zones are filled to the brink with ships in orbit. I'm told different things on the nature of this. Some claim that the guns fired from the ships are actual commands being called in from Helldivers on the planet below. Regardless of whether that's true or not, the cinematic feel of it is still exciting. So, let's talk about that rule of cool. One controversial piece of news that came out relatively recently was word from a former 343 dev, expressing that a game very much like Helldivers 2 could have been made with the Halo license. Specifically, they pitched an ODST game. That's Orbital Drop Shock Trooper. You can probably tell where the inspiration comes from, obviously. That never ended up being made. And there's a big overlap with the nerd culture community here in a positive way, in the sense that Helldivers 2 seems to remind everybody why they love the genre so much. References have been made to Warhammer 40k, Halo, and many other licenses. In fact, if you go through the cosmetics the game has to offer, you'll notice this breadth and variation in art styles yourself. Yet somehow it all seems to kind of work together and coexist. Personally, I'm pretty excited for Dune Part 2, as you can tell. Perhaps the fact that the game doesn't take itself too seriously helps a lot. But something tells me we're not going to get any clown suits in the game. So there is an effort to have as much fun as possible, but not deviate too much from the art style. The biggest comparison here is obviously the ODSTs of Halo. Even the helmets seem to have a distinct similarity, but they still feel like their own thing. The game has a utilitarian look to it, but it also wants to have fun and revel in itself a little bit. Everybody has a cape, for instance. Why? Because capes are cool, duh. And certainly the subtle branding of the skulls and the armor adds a little bit of gritty panache. Kind of like how 40k does. Dialogue is quippy, and the humor is definitely leaned into quite a bit, but the voice acting is actually pretty good?
The origin of the automatons is yet unknown, but after this contemptible incursion, their fate is sealed.
Each ship has its own assigned democracy officer on behalf of Super Earth, emboldening your efforts to take the fight to the vicious Terminid threat and the automaton menace. If the goal here is to make me a loyal soldier, it's worked. My brother in Christ doubled the defense budget. The game bleeds with personality and manages to feel like a kaleidoscope that illuminates and pays homage to its inspiration, rather than feeling like plagiarism or copy-pasting. This is a sweet spot of artistic direction that's pretty difficult to pull off, but when it does happen, you get a game that attracts a massive audience, as well as a shared community culture and feeling of personal involvement that makes it feel alive. I don't know how many fans of this channel are addicted to Twitter like the person making this video is, but stay on the timeline long enough and you'll find no shortage of memes. While the allusions to various sci-fi licenses are there, the game is about you shooting as many bugs and killer robots as you possibly can while doing a mission. Whenever you make a co-op shooter, the thing you have to nail is the different enemy types, as well as the various mobs that the faction will throw at you. And the game does a brilliant job with both that are available right now. The Terminids are your typical stand-in giant sci-fi bug, like your Zerg from StarCraft or Tyranids from 40k. The automatons are basically Terminator, or that weird mech suit that one guy had from Jedi Outcast. Bit of a deep cut, I know. Each enemy has a distinct sort of gameplay loop you have to go through in order to take them down that doesn't feel forced or cheap. Some of them you can just shoot them. Some of them you gotta shoot them really precisely. Some of them you gotta blow up. And there's more than one way to skin a cat. For instance, Robo Nixon is up-armored and can't be easily taken down from the front with conventional small arms. But with this armor-penetrating rifle with a scope attached, I can go prone, reducing the recoil significantly with my armor passive, and snipe him with multiple long-range shots on his head, which serves as the weak spot. You can, of course, be less subtle and just blast him with anti-armor rockets. But since the 40k dreadnoughts tend to be a big pain in the butt, I usually save the rockets for them and try to take them off the board as quickly as possible. Still, non-specialized weapons can serve functionalities in a pinch, meaning that every enemy is still vulnerable if you play your cards correctly, which is a trait that I like quite a bit. Instead of a rock, paper, scissors game, it becomes one of resource management. Different enemies have their own different energies that they project onto the battlefield that can turn the tide in an instant. And even the smallest of opponents are dangerous in numbers. One particularly terrifying bug can go invisible and seem to take frustratingly large amounts of shots before getting away, meaning you really should be aiming for the head if you can help it. Bigger opponents often have knockbacks or explosive ordnance that can knock you on your ass and put you in another action movie scene you didn't volunteer for.
Calling down a sentry.
Holy guys, I don't think you understand. Don't come up the hill. Don't come up the hill. There's hundreds.
Worst case scenario, it's the best opportunity to feel like the main character.
Anybody gotta, like...
Yeah, I got a bomb where? Never mind.
Honestly, any direction.
The game encourages you to use your brain a little bit at higher difficulties. And out of the box, it already has some kind of tactical bro mechanics to begin with, which is interesting for a game this arcadey. For one, milsim guys will notice that reloading doesn't magically merge your shots together. If you toss the mag early, you toss that magazine early and lose it forever. So you can't COD reload. Ammo conservation becomes an important aspect of the gameplay loop and forces you to think carefully about how you're going from point A to point B. And while 7 magazines for your primary weapon feels like a lot, you can and will run out faster than you think, considering the sheer amount of enemies you'll be shooting. The bulk of the game is in the stratagem system though, a system of calldowns from orbit that provides you with power weapons, ammo, airstrikes, and other logistical supply stuff. But to call them in, you gotta do a little bit of DDR, with corresponding up, down, left, and right inputs before being able to call in the package. This mechanic is carried over to stuff like terminals to move the objective forward, and a near limitless potential of balancing is integrated here with the complexity and the length of the directional strokes. Over time, you can memorize the keystrokes to the point where it feels like a walk in the park. But if you're not as familiar with it, you'll be punished for trying to use a lengthy call-in while being surrounded by the enemy. Other call-ins are as simple as up, right, and can save you in a pinch. The game has spawned so many memes, art, memes, more memes. It has a shared culture in a pretty short amount of time. It even has shared narratives. As the game world shifts, so too does the community to the impending threat in-game. This video was created off of the heels of the Automaton campaign as they ravaged the western quadrant of the galactic map. The planet Malevelon Creek was commonly, jokingly, albeit not really jokingly, referred to as Robot Nom, which if you look at the footage, it's Robot Nom. And the community laments its fall to the enemy, a testament to the numbers and viciousness of the robot menace. But Dropnir, its neighboring planet, must not fall. The game encourages you to participate in different campaigns and rewards you over time with commitment to the war effort. The game caught fire so quickly too. Unprepared for the sheer amount of player numbers, not particularly to the fault of the devs, the servers needed to be kept at a certain cap of 450,000 to keep from crashing. It's an interesting sort of good problem for a game to have, being too popular. At one point, the devs rewarded everybody with an XP boost as an apology for the server problems, which caused more people to play and put strain on the servers. The game has become a shared favorite just about overnight, evoking notes of the Pokemon Go craze that happened about a decade ago. Just about all your friends are probably playing it right now, so you can hop in on their raid and say hi. One thing the game is making people talk about is the difference between making a game fun and making a game competitive. In a world where competitive esports anything is just about as controversial and heated as a conversation can get for FPS games, Helldivers 2 invites you to take a step away from that scene and just have some fun. But it's not to say that the game is brain dead and easy. It's not to say that you can't sweat a little bit either, because at higher difficulties, the game is certainly tough. If you don't set your turrets up right, if you don't isolate the targets you need to isolate, you will get to a point on some missions where it doesn't matter how well you can shoot, because you'll be surrounded by opponents every turn. There are strategic battles you have to win the tactical ones later. Somehow, the game manages to do a really good job of making each moment feel winnable, and I think that's what makes it so special. Seemingly overwhelming odds certainly feel overwhelming, but at the same time, triumphing over those odds is super exciting. It manages to hit this perfect sweet spot of challenging and fun at the same time. Some missions, and especially higher difficulties, will require you to coordinate with your team and manage your resources efficiently. If there's anything that Destiny 2 players can attest to, just because something is PvE doesn't mean it's casual. That's a big mistake to make. But what stands out is the game's emphasis on coordination and team play not feeling forced. There are many opportunities to take the load off of your teammates. For instance, there are weapons that are a massive pain in the butt to reload on your own, though you can certainly do that and be self-sufficient. However, you can also have a teammate put on the backpack for that support weapon if you want, and then reload them from that backpack more efficiently, putting out a cone of fire that you might desperately need. When being in the right place at the right time turns a lost situation into a won situation, it makes the game feel so much more alive and exciting. Little things aside from just shooting win the war, and that's true in real war as it is in video game war. So the game rewards you for having a plan and sticking to it. There's a phase at the beginning of the drop where you and your teammates can select on the map where you want to go in relation to the other mission objectives. You can see the location of enemy threats marked in a heat map. And so a lot can happen before this even starts. Planning out the actual route that you want to take in the mission map is crucial to making sure that everything goes smoothly. And this is an interesting part of the gameplay dynamic because you can bounce back and forth off of your teammates, shoot out ideas, and then eventually your plan might get shot down, but it might not have been a bad plan per se. So in a way, the game is making managed democracy fun. And what's wrong with that? Everybody loves a little bit of managed democracy, right? It happens among my friend group, but maybe it's happened among your friend group too. People are talking in Helldivers speak. I think you can kind of infer what I'm getting at. It's really interesting how the game has managed to get so many people on board with this idea quite naturally and in a fluid and dynamic way. Like, Yeah, irony poisoning has certainly infected the internet, but the game isn't really trying to make a point in the same vein that Starship Troopers was. The game is just really fun more than anything else, and leans into that as much as possible. Does it have very, very on-the-nose humor? Yeah, it does.
Liberty. Hi there. Democracy. Our way of life. Oh, hello. But freedom doesn't come free. No! Sweet liberty! No! Look familiar?
The only good bug is a dead bug, okay? Another component that's really interesting here is the potential for more content. In the galactic map, you can see these different quadrants have different territories that the enemies are occupying or fighting for. But these are just small sections of the map. There's a whole bunch of other planets in the middle here that I assume are going to be raided at some point. In fact, the game even implies that Earth and Mars are up for the taking from an enemy invasion. I'm sure a lot of people have started with Helldivers 2. I didn't even know Helldivers was a thing, really. I didn't know about Helldivers 1, the twin stick shooter that it was before. But in Helldivers 1, you had mech suits, and you had a whole third enemy faction, the Illuminate, which were like these floaty force field laser alien types. So there's already potential for a lot more content they can integrate into Helldivers 2 moving forward here. And the base game already has a lot of replayability and a robust amount of content for $40. Compared to other games out now on the scene for $70, it really begs the question, what could these guys have done with a bigger budget? If they managed to do this, which is leaving a lot of $70 games right now in the dirt, what could Arrowhead do with more resources and more staff? What we have currently is already such a massive slam dunk. It's really going to be interesting to see where the game goes in the future. I don't think Helldivers 2 is exactly the most complicated game. At its surface, it's pretty simple. You drop into a map, there's an objective, run around, shoot bad guys, and get away. But the fact that I feel like each dive, per se, has its own unique sort of narrative and story that plays out over the course of, say, 40 minutes or so, is really, really exciting and fun. In fact, just working on this video, I had a harder time figuring out whether or not to work on the video or play the game, because there were just so many nuts to crack here. It's $40. If you like Gears of War, this is hugely up your alley. If you like co-op, PvE-based kind of shooters, this is hugely up your alley. Or if you're just a military sci-fi nerd in general, this game is hugely up your alley. I recommend Helldivers 2 wholeheartedly, passionately, democratically. My life for Super Earth.
We deal with our problems head on.
I like that strategy.
I can get the bot drop, I think, once it comes in.
Enemy down.